don't need to be hooked up to life support. I mean, it was an immense change in activities, handling all the fertilizer product, the storage of the fertilizer, the pallets of micronutrients. I mean, the rust on equipment, the extra hours, the extra fuel, all of that was draining from my family. Now I can stay home and raise my kids, and the crops don't need me anymore.
Right.
You know, they're taking care of themselves.
It's a much more self-sustaining system. And the closer we get to nature doing its thing, the better off we have become. And as far as our family life and on the farm and our soils, everything has benefited from the transition to regenerative practices. And I don't know, just to touch base, like I said, regeneration is such a huge spectrum of what you can include in your farming practice to be considered regenerative. For us, the number one thing is no tillage. We avoid that at number one, partly because of the release of the carbon into the atmosphere. But another reason is because of the tillage destroys the microbial network in the soil. And all of that network that's busy working to help us is gone in an instant the minute we till that up. So that's like the number one thing. We don't use any seed treatment anymore. No fungicide, no insecticide, no fertilizer of either synthetic or organic, and no pre-harvest desiccants anymore. So that has been a huge change, and we are, still bettering the land, but instead of fertilizing it, we're growing cover crops so that they can give back to the land in a way that is usable for the plants.
And we no longer force ourselves on the landscape. If conditions aren't right to be there, we're not out there. We're not out there creating compaction when conditions aren't right. And sometimes that allows us to not get a cash crop in. So we'll go in with covers or something when the time is right. Because it's proven to us that undisturbed, healthy soil system is worth way more than the cash crop that's growing on it. So we put the health of that soil at the forefront of every decision now, because I know if I destroy that soil, I'm going to be back to taking care of sick plants. And I don't want to do that. I spend time with my kids at the lake now. I spend time sledding. I spend all kinds of time. I'm not missing them growing up, so.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought.
I have a good kind of jump in, because one of the things that I think is so fascinating to me about your guys' story touches on each other. One is that all of your neighbors are still completely conventional farmers, and you guys are in a huge ag community. So maybe you could share a little bit about how it's been to transition amidst everyone else staying the same.
Well, I think we can totally relate to all of the farmers around us. I mean, we can understand what their mentality is, as far as, like I said, the old truth of what a good farmer was is not accurate anymore, and we're kind of outcast. I'm not going to lie.
The farm looks different.
It looks different. We get a lot of raised eyebrows, kind of like, oh boy, what are they growing now? And we are mistaken a lot of times for, are you guys organic now? Well, no, we're not. We don't go by a label, because we don't want to be put in that box as far as certified and have to meet certain checklists and things like that. So what we try to do is, like I said, put the soil first and focus on a healthy plant. Healthy plants are going to produce healthy seeds, and, it's all going to be beneficial for the environment and for the people who
And even during a disaster, we look at how are we going to handle a disaster to do the least amount of impact on our soil. Like, what do we do with when a disaster event comes about? How can we manage that and handle that to not destroy our soil system and have to work the next 10 years to try to rebuild it?
And for what he's saying is, so I said we don't do any sort of tillage. So last September, a year ago, last September, so it would have been September 19, we got record 27 inches of rain in the month of September when we should have been combining spring wheat and our mustard. And so it left our crop was devastated through sprouting and quality and lost almost completely. And then follow that up into the spring of 2020, where the soils were so saturated, we couldn't get into them. And it was one of those things where you really had to sit on your hands because
to not force yourself on the landscape. Because
the only way to get in there was going to be to till it up. And we were absolutely not going to do that. And so we sat and we sat and we sat, and there were 2 days that where the soil on some of our rented ground was fit to seed with our equipment, and where our equipment was not going to destroy the system that we had in place. And so we went last year without a cash crop, technically, but the remaining acres were all seeded in July into a full season cover crop, which
6 species mixes just to feed our soil system.
Just to feed the soils. So that's not anything that we're going to going to be able to cash in on, but the benefit and the value
stored in that soil was worth more than any cash crop we could have got.
Right. And worth way more than going out there and destroying the soil network through tillage or compaction through our tractors or anything like that. So it was one of those things where we really had to hold tight because if we had tillage in our practice, we would have been out there. And that was most of our neighbors were in and out there. And they even said, well, you could be out there if you till it up. Well, we could have been.
And then after that, droughts came and high winds, and you saw walls of soil blowing all around us.
The only thing in place during that time were our fields that had the volunteer stuff coming from the spring that weren't worked black. And that's just a sad scenario when you're driving by a field and it's blowing across the road. I mean, it's just devastating to be losing topsoil like that. And it's such a sad situation that can fully be avoided, and admittingly, there aren't a lot of farmers that are going to make the choice to care for that soil and let it just be. And it initially was a hard choice, but if you don't think, about writing the check, right? So like if we can just not spend the money on it, then we don't, you don't need it to produce as much. So it's a difficult transition, but it can totally be done. And I think we've come across a lot of different scenarios that, we could have been like, well, I guess we'll just have to till it up. But we've come this far now, and it's more of like, hell no, we're not tilling it up. If we were going to till it up, we should have done that a long time ago.
That's what's nice about not having a label. So when we get dealt diverse, extreme situations, we can handle those in ways, everyone can handle them in different ways to do what they can to put the soil at the forefront of their decisions. Where if we did get something stuck by accident or whatever, we could go out there and fix something, which we don't typically get stuck, because if it's wet, we're not out there. Just because we've seen what compaction can do and how long it takes to get rid of compaction in field.
Wow. It's so incredible. I thank you guys. I mean, the whole theme of this session was the transformational power of transition from conventional to regen. And you guys just explained it in such a beautiful form. So you nailed it. And we actually have some questions coming in if you guys want to maybe pop into some of that mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, cool.
Mhm.
All right. So Greg asked, are your neighbors taking, Greg, do you want to ask directly or would you rather me read your question? Okay, I think he's saying sure. All right, I'll ask him to unmute.
Hey, you good?
Yeah, we got you. Oh, and then we lost you. You're coming back. Now you're back.
I was just seeing if your neighbors have taken any interest in like asking you questions or seeing like some of your positive results, and if they've taken any interest in asking you questions, you know.
Immediate neighbors, they're still kind of on the fence. We do have one 38 miles away that was asking questions and is now transitioning some acres, which is
very encouraging.
Very, very encouraging. And he's on fire. He's committed.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in it. He's in it to win it. Yeah. I mean, I can tell he's gonna do good. But there are a lot of older farmers around us and they see things kind of traditionally and it visually looks different driving by pickup the fields, you know, covered with multi-species mixes and that sort of thing and companion planting and no black soil, no pretty rows coming up and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, it looks different. So the visual aspect of it is very difficult for the conventional farmers that are farming across the fence rows from us.
Yeah.
And we don't use GMOs or anything, and we are around a lot of GMO beans and corn. So the fields have absolutely nothing growing in them but Roundup resistant weeds now, I guess, which is pretty discouraging, but.
Right.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna pass it over to Brian. He has a question.
There we go. Yeah, you talked about there came the point where you changed everything, but you had already been no-till. Do you think it makes sense for people to convert to no-till conventional as a step towards where you are?
Yeah, I would say it's a step. If you are a full-blown tillage, yeah, no-till would be a step. Mm-hmm. I mean, we started no-till 20 some years ago, so we had that step already in place. But yeah, I would say to the conventional farmer that would be a step just to stop tilling, you know, and start direct seeding. But you can no-till conventional for a lot of years, and the cover cropping is really what makes the no-till work, especially in a conventional area where they're saying that they have to till because it's too wet. Adding the cover crops will take care of that problem. You know, I think the cover cropping part of the regenerative movement is going to be that tool that's needed to make no-till work. So I would say if someone is going to start the no-till path, if they'd start using cover crops right away, they'll eliminate a lot of years of trial and error and maybe discouraging effects from no-till.
Right.
Well, one more, sneak another question in. How about the economics of it? You know, obviously you've reduced your input costs, but how about yields and profits?
We don't talk yields anymore. Yields aren't as important. Profitability is what's more important. Signing the back of the checks instead of the front of the checks is kind of what's been our priority.
It's always nice.
You know, and we didn't really put that at the forefront when we started. It just, you know, you do what's best, and it seemed like the money seemed to follow. You know, it seemed to happen. We just kind of did what was best for our farm, and along with that, the profitability followed. Pretty soon the bills got smaller, and we kind of evolved through it and started observing that happening too. At the end of the year, there wasn't big operating notes to pay back.
Right. And then I think that too, when, you know, their inputs got lower, but in such a way that, so if I'm not spending $250,000 on fertilizer a year. I can raise a whole lot less grain than I could before. And I think that part of the economics of the farming community is, right, so you have to pay for your seed, and you have to pay for your chemical, and you have to pay for your fertilizer, and all of that to get the bushels enough to cover what you have into it, right? And meanwhile, you push the yield because the price is low. You need more bushels because this price is low. Well, why is the price low? The price is low because the whole market is flooded with grain that has zero nutritional value. And so it's not worth anything. Whereas if people would just take a step back and be like, hey, wait a minute, I don't need to put all that stuff into my operation. I can cut my inputs, seed it the same way, leave it alone, take what you can, and then there'll be a demand for the grain again, because there hasn't been. And when there's a surplus, we are like the only industry that's just going to keep producing more and more and more and more. And the problem is most of it is devoid of nutrition. And regenerative grains can really do that in a different way. And he won't talk yield, but I don't mind. So like if we were regularly pulling a 70, 75 bushel wheat crop off of our ground with fertilizer, intensive wheat management is what we called it back then. And now consider the fact that we have zero fertilizer inputs, and our chemical is next to nothing. And we don't have the sprayer passes that we used to, and we can still pull 50 to 55 bushels on that ground.
And there's a lot of hidden expenses that come in the conventional model too, even handling the product. You know, you look at conveyor belts wearing out, the extra passes with the semis, the tires on the trucks, the extra fuel, the extra operators moving the product. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that once you eliminate the product and the inputs, a lot of those little hidden expenses disappear. And we're handling a lot less money, but we're keeping more of it.
Right. It's not passing. There's not as much passive
through our hands.
Some of it stays here, which is kind of new and familiar. But we're grateful for it. And I think that it's such a huge shift in a mindset to realize that overproducing isn't the answer. And what we need on the market are grains that are nutrient dense, that are digestible, that are going to improve our gut health, right? Because that's everywhere right now. And what we can do as regenerative farmers to correct that. And I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about too was that the only way that, I don't know if anybody's ever looked, but you won't find regenerative grain, whole grain in a store anywhere. There's lots of organic, right? So the stores will carry organic. There's even a section for them. Most stores will have that. But what it's going to take is the power of the people to be like, we want food grown this way, and we want you to carry it in your stores. That's how organic stuff got in stores. And it does take some education. It does take saying, I want grains grown regeneratively, and somebody being like, well, what the heck does that mean? And under the simplest of definitions is just saying, taking care of the soil and producing a healthy plant and producing a healthy grain. I think that's really the important part. And what we, or me specifically moving forward, I totally am 100% on board on getting the message out there that there's a way to do it differently, and doing it in a way that we can still feed everyone. You know, I think that's a huge misconception, is that if you're going to starve everyone growing stuff the way you do. We actually aren't going to starve anyone, because there are more nutrient value in the grains that we grow than there is in a conventional system. And we are not that far behind on yields. So
and we are 1% of the population. So if we can get the other 99% of the population asking for this, asking for regeneratively grown crops, we'll make it happen.
It has to be a collaborative
effort between the farmer and the consumer. The
Right.
farmers are going to love to give the market what it wants.
Right.
And the consumer is the market. So if the consumer says, I want this, we're going to deliver. And it's going to benefit everybody. It'll benefit human health and our environmental microbiome that we live in. I don't see any negative aspects of it at all. There will be no food shortage. I mean,
That's right. That's what they want us to think, that there's a scarcity, right? That's terrifying. The thought that we could all starve to death because farmers don't know what they're doing anymore, or and really there's a way to do it differently and maybe do it better and do it in a way that will actually help people thrive, and maybe be able to be around longer, you know?
Yeah. And on that note, DeAnna, because I love that, just this idea that you guys are, a lighthouse, and, through your YouTube channel and just through some of, situations like this, you guys are sharing out some of the practices that you guys are doing. And Jen is really curious if there are any avenues that you would consider making presentations to your local farmers and friend farmers, showing them the economics that you just shared. So about like handling a lot less money and keeping more of your money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we want to dive more into. And I think that our YouTube channel is just a scratching of the surface, but locally, specifically, and I want to just say, like, part of the reason up until this year, our regeneratively grown grains have been brought to market at the elevator, just like we would have done as a conventional no-till farmer. So we were, and part of that was because that's what you do. You sell your grain as a commodity on the market, and that's where it's handled. And we have been doing that with our regenerative grains. Like I said, we weren't thinking about it being worth more at the start of it. And initially it had been enough to just know that what we're doing and our farming practices,
we were in our own little bubble. We made our own little environmental microbiome. We lived, worked, and played in. And that was good.
That's been enough. And it just, especially this last 6 months with the pandemic and everything like going crazy.
Our kids are going to school wearing masks now. I mean,
people need nutrient dense foods to try to boost their immune systems, to maybe help us do a better job of being able to fight stuff off. And I think, and like I said, we were just bringing it to the market like we would have any other time. And about six months ago, we were in a local eatery, and I was inspired by this locally owned bakery, by the ambiance, by their story. It felt like grandma's kitchen. It felt like I had been there before. And we were eating sandwiches, and I was like, I wonder where they get their flour. Like, it started out with me asking the question, where are they getting their flour? And so I talked Kelly's ear off the whole way home, like, blah, 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 blah. Maybe they want to use regenerative grains. Maybe they want to. And Kelly's like, oh, so I get a little bit, a little bit cart ahead of the horse sometimes. But it ended up me reaching out to this local bakery and asking them where they were sourcing their flour, or if they were grinding their own flour. And it turns out that this local bakery wanted to.
He never thought of it before you mentioned it.
Well, he said, well, I'd always wanted to like mill my own flour, but I didn't think it was possible. And he had no idea what regenerative grains were and how they were not only better for like the food system, but how they're better for the environment. And the growing practices make a difference in the environment. And so it started a whole conversation about, hey, maybe you want to source some regenerative grains grown locally, that's really why I started branching out and like offering it. And so moving forward in 2021, it's very exciting to be like helping, you know, bringing our grains to a market that we wouldn't have been able to reach directly.
Well, and sharing them with the consumer so the consumer can have the health benefits of this. I mean, everyone during this pandemic, I think we need to focus on supporting immune system functions and gut health for the entire population. And that there was a prime example of how one person asking a question in a local bakery could change the entire industry in that, within that community. So now there would be a healthy, freshly ground grain option available in a convenience form at a restaurant for consumers in that area, in that community, that didn't exist before, from the power of one person asking the question. Now just think if 6 other people go to their local supermarket and ask where their regenerative food products are located. If we start asking those questions from the consumer, start demanding those things, we're going to have more access to them, and you're going to have farmers popping up and wanting to do this. Right.
And I think that, you know, more than I can reach people directly while I'm, you know, bakeries and restaurants, they can reach way more people in one day than maybe I can in one day. And you don't have to have your own grain mill to eat whole grains, right? Like that's something that we're focusing on in our house, is putting our grain on the table. Like, is that crazy? But we weren't eating what we were growing. Like, there's something wrong with that. Like, if it's not on our table, that's crazy. And so now I'm proud to say that we are, you know, 2 to 3 of the meals on the table every day have a whole grain in them, whether it is English muffins from our whole wheat, or whether it's wheat berries in the leek soup that I made yesterday, or if it's, I mean, wheat berries in a green salad. Put it on anything. I mean, it's such a great source of protein, and a completely untapped resource. So we are in our home incorporating it on a regular basis. And like I said, it's crazy to think that we weren't before, but we weren't.
But it was a change of mindset. We had to change the way we see things. You know, the foods look different. You know, how we're looking at our foods are going to look a little different. The healthier alternatives are going to look different. And if we're grown up or raised eating those things, they're going to become normal. Like our kids will eat it, no problem. That's normal for them now.
Right. Which is super exciting.
That is so beautiful. I think we have time for one more question. Leia, did you want to go ahead and ask one?
Sure, yeah. Thank you guys so much. This has been so fruitful. I'm just curious, you know, how you were saying that farmer who's like, oh, are you doing the organic thing? Just like I can hear it and picture that whole scenario go down, but I'm just curious from his perspective or her perspective, like that connotation around organic, what is it? Is it kind of this hippie thing that just doesn't seem legit, or like what is the thing holding them back from making it seem like it's something viable?
I think tillage involved in organic agriculture, the tillage in the system. There is regenerative organic, which, I mean, that's like the holy grail. Like we would like to get there, you know, but it's going to take some work.
I don't want to label. Sorry.
I don't want to label, but I mean, I would like to say that I'm completely chemical free. I mean, we do still use some burn downs in the spring. I mean, we've got crops that we use nothing in crop over once the crop is growing, but given circumstances, we are using some in the spring. But the biggest thing with the organic around here is just the amount of tillage involved.
And the hurdles to become organic certified, like as farmers, you're just like, oh, you don't want to be certified organic. It's too much work. And I don't, for us, I know the label won't, well, actually, we have, we've been asked to grow certain grains for this local bakery. So exciting, right? Some ancient grains like red fife and einkorn and emmer and spelt, and there's a few others. And so I'm trying to source seed for these ancient grains, and organic seed is like the best option, right? And I had somebody tell me today that they wouldn't sell me seed unless I was certified organic or
certified biodynamic.
Certified biodynamic. I had never even heard of that, but I was like, oh yeah, I am. Like, I don't know. I mean, we practice biodiversity on our farm 100% of the time. So I absolutely am. I'll just put a little sticker on myself and be like, look, I am. So I think the whole organic thing is like, I think in people's minds, it's the healthy, expensive option, which I think has changed a lot. And I think more people are willing to be like, well, this is worth our money. But as a farmer, the hoops that have to be jumped through and maintained to be considered organic on a large scale farm. And
especially in an area of, I mean, we're no-till, but there's some, reduced till, strip till systems. When the organic system is next to that, it's very destructive on the environment. Around here, just, the washing of the soil, there's still some summer fallowing where fields are left black. In that system, I mean, a regenerative organic would be the way to go, but that's how organic is viewed around here, I guess, in the farming community.
Thank you.
Yep.
Amazing. We got some, I'll check out the chat before you guys exit, but just in the interest of being respectful of everyone's time, I don't want this to end. It's been so amazing to hear you guys share from A to Z and beyond. And I'm going to drop in the chat really quick. Earlier, I shared Kelly and DeAnna's YouTube channel, so be sure to check them out there. And then this is also where you can follow along with them on social media. So I'd love to just really quickly, DeAnna, Kelly, are there any final parting words that you'd like to share with everyone before we go? But always, I'm sure they know that they can find you on Mighty Networks as well.
Yeah, I want to say, I was thinking about it today, and like usually most of us know the name of our hairdresser, and we have a Tupperware lady, and we have a Scentsy lady, and we have a nail lady, and we have a Pampered Chef lady, right? Mm-hmm. We all need to start learning the names of our farmers. Like, what it could be more important than getting to know a farmer and getting to trust that farmer and knowing where the traceability of where your food is coming from. And
tell him or her what you want. Don't rely on the government creating a label telling you what's safe. Get to know the guy or girl growing it.
Right. And that,
tell them what you want.
As soon as that bakery was like, hey, could you find this? I'm like, I'm going to try. I will totally try to find that. And I've never grown any of those, but I totally will give it a shot. And absolutely, I want that stuff on my table. So I think that's traceability and being able to understand where our food is coming from is really what I want people to try to do more of. For me. How about you?
For me, I want to talk about success. Now, success isn't about...
That's upside down. It's upside down, you see?
That's a very good observation, DeAnna. Success isn't about how much money we make or how many acres we farm. And if you've gone down that path, it's not too late to turn that around. Success is about when you wake up every morning and you get to do what you love and what you're passionate about. Success is that feeling that you get when you know what you're doing is right. And one of those things you have to do with success is look around your environment and look at the reflection of success around you. This is my daughter in kindergarten. When she grows up, she wants to be a farmer.
That's the goal, right? I'm so trying to raise a 5th generation farmer.
This is 2nd grade now. She came home with this, and it looks like a, you know, a picture of flowers and rain or whatever. But when you really get to look at this, right here, you've got our cash crops growing, getting rain. This is what they need. And these cash crops, you've got companions planted between the rows. And you've got this nice, dark, humic layer here. But the fantastic thing here is underneath this is you've got a world of life underneath our cash crops. You've got a living ecosystem that exists below where our cash crops are growing. Now, this is how she sees the environment around her now. So she doesn't have to go through that unlearning process like we did. So your success isn't direct to you in a way, but if you look for it around you, you're going to see it. And we didn't know we're teaching, but those kids are listening, and they're going to grow up knowing this. But her seeing what's under our crop as a living, beautiful, colorful thing, receiving water and great, that is success.
Wow, that truly was, that just made my day. Leia said it first, and that is just so accurate. And I think, wow, you guys, just the power of you living your life, you're creating a legacy. That's so beautiful and so powerful. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I want to do something fun. We've never done this before, but I'm just going to really quickly say, we're going to post a replay of this after, so pop back into Mighty Networks and you can watch all this good stuff again. You can reach out to me or Kelly or DeAnna or Paul or really anyone who is here if you have extra questions, or we can keep the conversation going. And I just want to unmute everyone, and if anyone wants to say anything, I think we're good now. But if you guys want to hop on and just say thanks to Kelly and DeAnna, share how this session impacted you, or if you guys got to jump off, just thank you so much for coming here today. We'll do more of these Farmside chats. And really, you guys, Kelly and DeAnna, this was amazing. That ending was just powerful, Kelly. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated it.
Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you too. We're down in Patagonia, different environment. absolutely fascinating. And I'd like to be in touch because I'm very interested in everything that you do. Real cool.
Thank you so
Paul.
much.
Thank you. Very interesting. And I'd like to second what Paul said. Farming is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing it like that. That's encouraging.
Awesome, guys. Well, we'll wrap. Thank you guys so much for coming here today and sharing your story. It was so beautiful to hear it directly from you. Everyone have a beautiful rest of your Friday and an awesome weekend.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.